you want to avoid the torment of the damned, don't sin. Very simple. Like the Gospel of Peter, this book is written in the first person, by Peter. But, like the Gospel of Peter, there is no way that Peter actually wrote this book. This book comes from the second Christian century, many decades after Peter was dead. This is a book that claims to be written by Peter that was not written by Peter. The author was lying about his identity. As it turns out, these are not the only two books written in the name of Peter from early Christianity. We have books that allegedly describe Peter's missionary exploits, the Acts of Peter. We have letters that Peter allegedly wrote. We have two other apocalypses, allegedly by Peter. Writing books in the name of Peter was something of a cottage industry in early Christianity. And Peter wasn't the only one. We have books written in the names of Paul, of James, of Andrew, of Thomas, of Mary, of Philip. Name your apostle. Lots of people were writing books in the names of the apostles, knowing full well that they were not the apostles. Now, when I was in graduate school, when we learned this kind of material, we did not learn that we should call these books forgeries. We were taught that these books should be called pseudepigrapha. Pseudepigrapha is spelled with a P, P-S-E-U-D-E, pseudepigrapha, and we were told that that means a false writing, which is fair enough. But actually, what we weren't told is the literal meaning of pseudepigraphon. The literal meaning of a pseudepigraphon is a writing that has been inscribed with a lie. And that's what ancient people called these books. They called them lies. There's another word for these books in the ancient world besides lies. In addition to calling them pseudoi, they called them nothos. The word nothos in Greek is the Greek word for bastard that carries the same connotations as our word bastard. It's not a nice word. It was called a bastard because the book doesn't legitimately belong to its so-called author, the bastard. So, the ancient people did not give sort of antiseptic terms to this kind of writing, and my view is that we shouldn't give antiseptic terms to it either. These are what we would today call a forgery. If you write a book and publish it and put on the title page that your name is Bart Ehrman, that's a forgery. Don't do that. Well, how prominent was forgery in the ancient world? Was this a widespread practice or a rare practice? It turned out it was a widespread practice. So I want to say something about that. Some scholars have said that since it was a widespread practice, it was an acceptable practice. That is wrong, as I'll show you in a minute. But first, it was a prominent practice. We know that it was prominent in the ancient world that people wrote forgeries, claiming to be people they weren't, because not only do we have a lot of forgeries from the ancient world that we can identify as not being written by the people who are claimed to be authors. And I'm not just talking about Christians now. I'm talking about Roman books, Greek books, Jewish books, as well as Christian books. We have lots of forgeries from the ancient world, but not only that, but we have ancient discourse on forgery. We have ancient authors who talk about forgery. In fact, we have a lot of authors who talk about forgery. It was probably a little bit more common in the ancient world to write forgeries than it is today. Today, it's just so easy to get caught. In the ancient world, it was much harder to get caught. One reason it was harder to get caught is because very few people could read. And so few people could engage in any kind of stylistic analysis of a writing to know whether the author is who he said he was. And so forgery was more common in the ancient world, but just because it was common in the ancient world doesn't mean that it was accepted. The commonality of a practice has no bearing on its acceptance. How do I say this as clearly as I can? Just because some things are practiced widely does not mean they're socially acceptable. You can probably think of some examples.